My family made me eat their leftovers for 8 years. So I started serving them food from the garbage at Thanksgiving dinner. My family has this thing about leftovers. Not normal leftovers where everyone eats them the next day. I mean, they'd make fresh food for everyone else and give me whatever was left from 3 days ago. It started when I was 12. My older brother Jake would get a fresh burger off the grill. My younger sister Ariane would get one too. I'd get the cold. Half Jake didn't finish yesterday. My mom would say food is food, stop complaining. My dad would add that I should be grateful we didn't waste anything. Grateful. For eating my brother's picked over scraps while watching him bite into a new burger. This went on for years. Every single meal. Breakfast, they'd make fresh pancakes for everyone. I'd get the soggy ones from Tuesday that had been sitting in the fridge. Dinner, they'd order pizza. 3 fresh boxes. I'd get the leftover slices from last weekend that had gone hard. Sunday roast meant everyone got fresh carved meat except me. I got the gristly ends from the previous Sunday mixed with whatever vegetables had gone soft. I tried everything. I offered to cook. They said no, the kitchen was Mom's domain. I tried buying my own food. They'd throw it out saying we don't waste money on duplicate groceries in this house. I got a mini fridge for my room. My dad removed it saying I was being selfish and dividing the family. The worst part was birthdays. On Jake's birthday, fresh 3-layer chocolate cake. On Ariane's birthday, fresh strawberry cheesecake. On my birthday, leftover pieces from both their birthdays frozen and thawed out, with candles stuck in it like that made it special. My mom would say at least you get 2 kinds of cake. When I turned 18 and got a job, I thought things would change. Nope. I'd come home from 8-hour shifts to find everyone had eaten fresh grilled chicken while a plate of 4-day-old spaghetti sat waiting for me. The spaghetti Jake had already picked all the meatballs out of. The spaghetti that had that weird fridge taste. But you need to eat with family, my mom would say. Family meals are important. What family meal? Everyone else ate 2 hours ago. I was eating alone at the table with their old food. I moved out at 20. They acted shocked. How could I abandon family? Why was I being so dramatic? Over food? It wasn't about food. It was about being treated like the family garbage disposal for 8 years. But I still came back for holidays because they guilted me into it. And guess what changed? Nothing. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. Everyone got fresh everything while my plate was literally their leftovers from lunch arranged to look like dinner. Last Thanksgiving was my breaking point. I watched my mom serve everyone fresh turkey, fresh stuffing, fresh everything. Then she went to the fridge and pulled out a Tupperware. Here, honey, I saved this for you from our practice dinner on Tuesday. Practice dinner. They had a whole practice dinner without me, and saved me the scraps. That's when I started planning this year's Thanksgiving. I volunteered to help with cooking. My mom was suspicious, but agreed. I showed up early Thursday morning with bags of groceries. Started cooking alongside her, everything looking perfect. The turkey golden, the sides beautiful. The whole family arrived. Jake with his wife, Ariane with her boyfriend, my aunts and uncles, everyone commenting how good everything smelled. We set the table. Everyone sat down. Time to serve. I went to the kitchen and came back with a garbage bag. The actual garbage bag from their kitchen trash. I'd pulled it out earlier and set it aside. Started plating from it. Old turkey from 2 days ago covered in coffee grounds. Stuffing mixed with eggshells. Mashed potatoes with cigarette ash from my uncle's ashtray. I set the first plate in front of Jake. What the hell is this? Leftovers. From the garbage. Isn't that what we serve some family members? My mom went white. That's not funny. Take that away. Oh, but I thought food was food. Isn't that what you always told me? I put a plate in front of Ariane. Bits of old salad covered in wet paper towel. She gagged. This is disgusting. You're right. It is disgusting. Eating garbage while everyone else gets fresh food. But hey, at least you're eating with family, right? My dad stood up. What is wrong with you? What's wrong with me? I ate your literal leftovers for 8 years. Not even good leftovers. The stuff you picked through and didn't want. While you all ate fresh food in front of me. Every meal, every day. But this is garbage, Jake's wife said. Not understanding yet. So was making a 12-year-old eat your cold, half-eaten burger while you got a fresh one. So was serving me frozen birthday cake from 2 months ago. So was having a practice Thanksgiving without me and saving me the scraps. My mom tried to defend it. We were teaching you not to waste food. Everyone else wasted food constantly. You just threw it away after picking out what you wanted. The only difference was you made me eat it instead of tossing it. My aunts and uncles were silent. They'd eaten here dozens of times. They'd seen it. They'd said nothing. I went back to the kitchen and what I brought out shocked them. The actual Thanksgiving dinner I'd spent 4 hours making this morning sat on the counter in perfect condition. I carried the turkey out first. Golden brown skin glistening under the dining room lights. Steam still rising from where I'd kept it warm. Set it right in the center of the table between the garbage plates. Went back for the stuffing. The real stuffing with cranberries and herbs, not the eggshell version on their plates. Then the mashed potatoes, creamy and smooth, green bean casserole, sweet potato pie, homemade rolls, everything they'd watched me cook alongside Mom, everything that smelled so good when they arrived. I arranged it all on the table while they sat frozen, staring at the contrast between what I'd served them and what I'd actually prepared. The garbage on their plates looked even worse next to the real food. Mom's chair clattered backward as she shot to her feet, her face going from white to bright red in seconds. She started yelling that I was being cruel, that I was manipulating everyone, that I'd planned this whole thing to humiliate them. Dad jumped up too, his voice getting louder as he said I'd ruined Thanksgiving, that I'd embarrassed them in front of the whole family, that this was unforgivable. I stood there watching them yell, noticing how neither of them actually defended what they'd done. They were mad about being exposed, not sorry for the 8 years of feeding me garbage. Jake's wife leaned close to him and asked what was going on, her voice quiet, but I could hear the confusion. He had to explain it to her. Had to tell his wife that yes, his parents really did feed me old leftovers while the rest of the family ate fresh food. Had to admit that he got fresh burgers while I ate his cold leftovers. Had to say out loud that this went on for years. She looked at him with this mix of horror and disgust spreading across her face. I watched him shrink under her stare, his shoulders curling in, his eyes dropping to his plate of garbage. He was realizing how it sounded when someone outside the family heard it, how there was no way to make it sound okay or normal. Ariane's boyfriend pushed his chair back from the table, the legs scraping loud against the floor. He said he'd suddenly lost his appetite, his voice flat and cold. Ariane burst into tears immediately, reaching for his arm, begging him to stay. She kept saying she didn't know it was that bad, that she didn't understand, that she was sorry. I reminded her she watched me eat her leftover pizza while she got fresh slices hundreds of times. She saw me eat soggy pancakes while she ate fresh ones. She knew exactly what was happening. She just didn't care because it wasn't happening to her. Her boyfriend pulled his arm away and headed for the door. Victoria cleared her throat and everyone went quiet. She said she needed to say something she should have said years ago. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the emotion underneath. She told my parents she'd watched them treat me like this since I was 12 years old. She'd sat at this table dozens of times and watched them serve me garbage while everyone else ate fresh food. She said she was ashamed she never called them out on it, that it was easier to pretend it wasn't happening than to cause family drama. The guilt in her voice was obvious and I felt something shift in my chest, realizing other people had seen it too. Audrey spoke up next, saying she and Victoria had talked about it multiple times over the years. They'd wondered if they should step in, if they should say something, if they should call someone. But they'd convinced themselves it wasn't their place to interfere in how my parents raised their kids. She said it directly to me, apologizing for choosing silence when she should have was chosen to protect me. I realized then that my isolation had been even more complete than I thought. People saw what was happening and chose to do nothing. So Jasper shifted in his seat and admitted he thought the whole leftover thing was weird, but figured there must be some explanation he didn't understand. Some reason that made sense to my parents that he just wasn't seeing. His justification hung in the air, weak and pathetic. I looked right at him and asked what possible reason could justify feeding a child garbage while her siblings ate fresh food. He had no answer. Mom tried switching tactics, her voice shaking as she insisted they were teaching me important life lessons about gratitude and not wasting food. She said they were trying to instill values, to make me appreciate what I had, to understand that food is precious. I pointed at Jake and Ariane and asked why they didn't need to learn those same lessons. Why only I had to eat picked over scraps to understand the value of food. Why only I had to be grateful for garbage while they got to waste fresh food constantly. She opened her mouth but nothing came out. Dad jumped in saying I always complained about everything, that I was picky and ungrateful and they were trying to teach me to be less difficult. He said they were trying to make me more appreciative of what I had. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my photos. I'd kept pictures over the years, documentation of what they fed me. Moldy bread, rock-hard pizza with the cheese turned gray, meat that had gone slimy. I held up the phone and started showing them around the table. Asked Dad to explain how eating spoiled food teaches appreciation. Asked him to tell everyone how feeding a child food that was literally rotting was supposed to build character. He couldn't look at the photos. Jake tried defending himself, saying he didn't know it bothered me that much. The laugh that came out of me was bitter and sharp. I reminded him about the time I was 14 and asked him directly why he got fresh food and I didn't. He'd looked at me like I was being ridiculous and told me to stop being dramatic and just eat what I was given. He'd known exactly what was happening and he'd told me to shut up and accept it. Ariane started crying then, her shoulders shaking as she covered her face with her hands. She said between sobs that she was just a kid back then, that she didn't understand how wrong it all was. I watched her cry for a few seconds before responding. She's 24 now. She's been an adult for 6 years. She watched me eat moldy bread while she got fresh toast every morning for years after she turned 18. She never once questioned it. Never once asked why I was different. Never once stood up for me. She had years to recognize the problem, but she stayed quiet because the system worked in her favor. Why would she rock the boat when she was getting everything she wanted? Her boyfriend put his arm around her shoulders, but she shrugged it off, still crying. I felt nothing watching her break down. No satisfaction, no guilt, just emptiness where something should have been. Nathan moved from where he'd been standing in the doorway. He walked into the dining room and everyone turned to look at him. He spoke quietly, but his voice carried. He told my parents that what they did has a name in psychology: scapegoating. They systematically singled out one child for different treatment, worse treatment, and that kind of targeted mistreatment causes lasting psychological damage. He explained it calmly, like he was teaching a class, but I could hear the anger underneath. He said they chose me as the family scapegoat and trained everyone else to see that as normal. The room went silent except for Ariane's crying. Mom's face went red and she turned on Nathan fast. She told him he doesn't understand our family, that he needs to stay out of family business. Her voice got shrill. She said he had no right to come into her home and make accusations about how she raised her children. Nathan didn't flinch. He responded calmly that he understands abuse when he sees it. He said watching someone he loves describe 8 years of being treated as less than human by her own family makes him understand plenty. He said the fact that they still can't take real responsibility proves they haven't changed at all. Mom opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Dad stood up like he might do something, but Nathan just looked at him steadily until Dad sat back down. The room exploded then. Everyone started talking at once, voices overlapping and rising. Jasper turned on Dad and asked why he never said anything about the extended family staying silent. Dad shot back that it wasn't their place to interfere. Jasper said watching a child be mistreated and doing nothing makes you part of the problem. Victoria jumped in saying she already apologized for her silence. Jake and Ariane started arguing across the table. Jake said Ariane was younger, so she had less responsibility. Ariane screamed that he was older and should have protected me. Their voices got louder and louder. Jake's wife tried to calm him down, but he pulled away from her. Ariane's boyfriend looked around the table like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. The aunts started defending themselves to each other. Someone knocked over a water glass and it shattered on the floor, but nobody moved to clean it up. I stood up. My chair scraped loud against the floor. I didn't yell, but my voice cut through all the noise. Everyone stopped talking and looked at me. I told them to stop. I said I didn't do this to watch them fight with each other. I didn't do this for some kind of revenge satisfaction. I did this because I needed them to finally see what they did to me. I needed them to stop pretending it was normal or acceptable. I needed them to stop making excuses. I looked around the table at all of them. My parents, my siblings, my aunts and uncles, every single person who participated in my mistreatment or watched it happen. I told them I spent 8 years being treated like garbage and they all acted like that was fine. The silence after I spoke felt heavy. Victoria spoke up then. She asked me what I wanted from them now. What would make this right? Her voice was gentle, but I could hear the genuine question underneath. She really wanted to know. I looked at her for a long moment before answering. I told her honestly that I didn't know if anything could make it right. 8 years of systematic mistreatment doesn't just go away because people finally admit it was wrong. But I knew that pretending it never happened wasn't an option anymore. Accepting their excuses wasn't an option anymore. I said I needed them to acknowledge the reality of what they did without justification or deflection. Victoria nodded slowly. She didn't try to argue or defend anyone. Mom started crying again. Real tears this time, not angry ones. She said through the tears that she never meant to hurt me. She thought she was teaching me important values about not wasting food and being grateful. Her voice broke on the last word. I looked at her crying and felt that same emptiness. I asked her why teaching me values required feeding me spoiled food while my siblings ate fresh meals. Why did Jake and Ariane get to waste food constantly while I had to eat garbage? Why was I the only one who needed to learn gratitude? She had no answer, just more tears. She kept crying and shaking her head like that would somehow make this go away. Dad cleared his throat. He said they made mistakes, but they did their best as parents. That sentence made me angrier than anything else he'd said all day. I felt heat rise in my chest. I told him that feeding one child garbage while the others eat fresh food isn't a mistake. Mistakes are accidents. Mistakes are one-time things. What they did was a choice they made every single day for 8 years. They chose to make fresh pancakes for Jake and Ariane. They chose to give me the soggy ones from 3 days ago. They chose to order fresh pizza for everyone else. They chose to give me the hard leftovers. Every meal, every day, For 8 years. Those were choices, not mistakes. Dad's face went pale. He looked down at his plate. Jake's wife stood up suddenly. She told Jake she needed to leave and asked if he was coming with her. Her voice was tight and controlled, but I could hear the disgust underneath. Jake looked at her, then at our parents, then back at her. I watched him struggle with the choice. His face showed everything he was thinking. Stay and support his parents or leave with his wife. Protect the family system or acknowledge how wrong it was. I saw the exact moment he made his decision. He stood up and mumbled an apology to nobody in particular. He wouldn't look at me. He and his wife grabbed their coats from the rack by the door. She walked out first and he followed without looking back. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Ariane's boyfriend stood up too. He said this was too messed up for him to process right now. Ariane grabbed his arm and begged him to stay. Her voice got high and desperate. She said they could talk about this later, that he didn't need to leave. He pulled his arm away gently and said he needed space to think about what kind of family he was getting involved with. Ariane started crying harder and asked what that meant. He didn't answer. He just walked to the door and left. Ariane collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. Her whole body shook. Mom tried to go to her, but Ariane pushed her away. The dining room felt smaller suddenly with fewer people in it. The beautiful turkey and sides I'd cooked sat untouched on the table next to the garbage plates. Nobody had eaten anything. The silence stretched out for what felt like forever. Everyone stared at their plates or the table or anywhere except at each other. Uncle Jasper cleared his throat and said maybe everyone should head home and let things cool down. Aunt Audrey jumped on that idea immediately. She said she just remembered she had something she needed to do early tomorrow. My other uncle said he had a long drive ahead. My aunt said she wasn't feeling well suddenly. Within 5 minutes, they were all grabbing their coats from the rack by the door. They mumbled awkward goodbyes and hurried out to their cars. I watched them leave through the window. Their brake lights disappeared down the street one by one. Then it was just me and my parents sitting at the table. The garbage plate still sat in front of where Jake and Ariane had been. The beautiful turkey and sides I'd spent hours making sat untouched in the middle. The cranberry sauce gleamed in its bowl. The stuffing looked perfect. The mashed potatoes were still steaming slightly. Mom broke the silence first. Her voice came out quiet and shaky. She asked what I wanted to do with all this food. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I told her I was taking it with me because I actually put effort into cooking it. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, found the plastic containers under the sink where Mom always kept them. Started pulling out the big ones, the ones for storing leftovers. The irony wasn't lost on me. I carried them back to the dining room and started packing up the turkey. Sliced off pieces and layered them carefully in the container. Mom and Dad just sat there watching me. I packed the stuffing next, then the mashed potatoes, the green bean casserole, the rolls, the cranberry sauce, every single thing I'd made. Dad finally spoke up. He asked if I was ever coming back, if this was the last time I'd see them. I didn't stop packing. I told him I honestly didn't know yet. My hands kept moving, sealing containers, stacking them. I could feel their eyes on me, but I didn't look up. Mom reached out like she wanted to touch my arm. I saw her hand coming toward me from the corner of my eye. She pulled it back before making contact. Her voice was thick when she spoke. She said she was sorry I felt hurt by their choices. That sentence made me stop what I was doing. I actually laughed. It came out harsh and bitter. I looked right at her, told her I didn't feel hurt. I was hurt. Past tense. Active voice. They hurt me. Her inability to take real responsibility was exactly why I didn't know if I could have a relationship with them. She started crying again. I went back to packing, carried the first load of containers out to my car. Nathan was waiting by his car parked on the street. He saw me coming with my arms full and jogged over, took half the containers from me. We loaded them into my trunk without talking. Walked back to the house together. My parents had moved to the doorway. They stood there watching us. Mom's arms were crossed. Dad's hands were in his pockets. We made 3 more trips. Each time we passed them in the doorway. Each time nobody said anything. On the last trip, I grabbed my purse and coat. Looked at the house one more time, the wallpaper in the hall that had been there since I was a kid. The family photos on the wall that I was barely in. The kitchen table where I'd eaten so many terrible meals alone. I realized this might be the last time I saw this place. The thought didn't hurt as much as I expected. This house never really felt like home anyway. Nathan and I got in our cars. He followed me back to our apartment across town. The drive took 20 minutes. He asked how I was feeling once we got on the highway. I told him I felt lighter somehow, like I'd finally said everything I'd been holding in for years. But also sad, because I think I just lost my family, even though they lost me a long time ago. He reached over and squeezed my hand. told me he understood. We got to our apartment and carried all the food upstairs. Our kitchen was small, but we made it work. Heated up portions of everything in the microwave. Set the table with our mismatched plates and silverware. Sat down across from each other. The food tasted incredible. Better than any holiday meal I'd ever had. Because I'd made it for myself. For someone who actually cared about me. Nathan told me he was proud of me for standing up for myself. Even though it was painful. Even though it cost me my family. We ate until we were full. Put the leftovers in the fridge. These leftovers were mine. Nobody picked through them first. Nobody saved them for me as an afterthought. I went to bed feeling exhausted, but somehow peaceful. Slept better than I had in weeks. Woke up the next morning to my phone buzzing like crazy on the nightstand. 17 missed calls, dozens of text messages. I scrolled through them with my coffee. Most were from Ariane. She was begging me to call her back. Said she needed to talk to me. Needed to explain things. Her messages got more desperate as they went on, saying please over and over. I deleted them without responding. Jake had texted too. His message was different. He said his wife was really upset. She was questioning their relationship because of what she learned about our family. He asked if I was happy now that I'd ruined his marriage. That told me everything I needed to know. He still didn't get it. Still thought this was about me wanting revenge. Not about them finally facing what they'd done. I deleted his messages too. Then I opened my email. Mom had sent a long message sometime around 3 a.m. The subject line said we need to talk. I started reading. It was full of explanations and justifications. About teaching me character. Preparing me for a hard world. Building resilience. The same excuses I'd heard my whole life. Just written out in paragraphs instead of spoken. I got halfway through and hit delete. I'd heard all of this before. Nothing had changed except now it was in writing. My phone rang while I was staring at the deleted email. Victoria's name showed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. She started talking before I could say hello. She told me she needed to say something she should have said years ago. Her voice sounded shaky. She said she failed me as an aunt. She watched my parents treat me that way since I was 12, and she never protected me. She said she understood if I didn't want a relationship with her, but she wanted me to know she recognized her part in it now. The complicity. That word hit different coming from her. I sat down on the couch. Told her I appreciated her calling. She asked if we could talk sometime when I was ready. I said maybe. She didn't push. Just said she'd be there whenever I needed her and hung up. Nathan brought me more coffee. Asked if I was okay. I nodded and scrolled through Ariane's messages again. They did sound different from Jake's. Less defensive, more scared. I decided to call her back. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was thick from crying. She said her boyfriend broke up with her. He told her he couldn't be with someone from a family that would treat a child that way. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. She begged me to call him. To tell him she's different, that she's not like our parents. I took a breath, told her gently that she participated in my mistreatment for years. She never questioned why I got different food. She never stood up for me, not once. She needed to understand why he was concerned instead of expecting me to fix this for her. The line went quiet for a second. Then her voice changed, got sharp. She said I destroyed the family, destroyed everyone's relationships just to make a point. I reminded her I didn't destroy anything. I just showed everyone what was already broken. The fact that she was angry at me instead of at our parents proved she still didn't understand. She hung up on me. I set my phone down and rubbed my face. Nathan sat next to me, put his hand on my shoulder. He said maybe I should talk to someone professional about all this, someone who could help me process everything that happened. I looked at him. He pulled out his laptop and started searching. Found a therapist named Lindsay Hooper who worked with family trauma. Her office was across town. Nathan helped me write an email requesting an appointment. She responded within an hour. Had an opening the following week. I booked it. The next few days were quiet. I ignored more messages from my parents. Blocked Ariane's number after she sent 40 texts in one night. Went to work, came home, tried to feel normal. 3 days after Thanksgiving, someone knocked on my apartment door around 8 at night. I looked through the peephole. Jake stood there looking exhausted. His hair was messy. His eyes had dark circles under them. I opened the door. He said his wife moved to her parents' house. She wouldn't talk to him until he dealt with his family issues. He said he needed to understand what happened. Needed to understand why everyone was so upset. I almost closed the door. But something about how tired he looked made me step aside. Let him in. We sat at my kitchen table. Talked for 2 hours. He admitted he never thought about why I got different food. He just accepted it as normal because that's how things always were in our house. He said watching his wife's face at Thanksgiving made him realize how wrong it was, made him see it through someone else's eyes for the first time. I asked him about specific things: the birthday cakes, the practice Thanksgiving, the mini fridge Dad took away. He remembered all of it, just never connected it to anything bad. He apologized. Actually apologized. Not the fake kind where someone says sorry you felt that way. A real apology. He said he couldn't undo the past, but he wanted to do better going forward. Then he told me he started seeing a therapist himself, to work through his privilege, his complicity. Those were his words. I told him I appreciated his apology, but I needed time before we could have a real relationship. He nodded, said he understood. Then he asked if I'd be willing to talk to his wife at some point, to help her understand he was serious about changing. I said maybe eventually. He thanked me and left. I locked the door behind him and leaned against it. Nathan asked if I was okay. I said I didn't know yet. The following week, I drove to Lindsay's office for my first therapy session. The waiting room had comfortable chairs and plants. Lindsay came out to get me. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40. She had kind eyes. We went into her office and sat down. She asked me to tell her why I was there. I started with Thanksgiving, then went back to the beginning. The 8 years of leftovers, the birthday cakes, the mini fridge, all of it. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a minute. Then she said what my parents did wasn't just about food. It was systematic devaluation. They taught me through their actions every single day that I was worth less than my siblings, that I deserved less, that my needs didn't matter. Hearing it labeled so clearly made something click in my head, made me understand why it hurt so much, why I couldn't just get over it like they wanted me to. She said we had a lot of work to do together, asked if I was ready to process this trauma properly. I said yes. For the first time in days, I felt like maybe I could actually heal from this. Not forget it, not pretend it didn't happen, but actually work through it and come out okay on the other side. Lindsay leaned forward in her chair and asked me what I wanted my life to look like going forward. Not what I wanted from my family, not how I wanted them to change. What did I want for myself? I sat there quiet for a minute because I realized I had no answer. I'd spent so much time being angry and hurt that I never thought about what healing actually looked like, never imagined what being happy might feel like. She gave me homework. Write down 3 things I wanted in my life that had nothing to do with my family. 3 things just for me. Over the next few weeks, I started blocking my family's messages. My phone would buzz constantly with texts from Mom, Ariane, even Jake. Voicemails piled up. I'd feel guilty every time I saw the notifications. Lindsay helped me understand that I didn't owe them immediate forgiveness just because they were family. Setting boundaries wasn't cruel. It was healthy. It was necessary. Nathan showed me how to set up filters so their messages went to a separate folder. I could check it when I felt ready, not when they demanded my attention. I was at work 3 weeks after Thanksgiving when Ariane showed up in the lobby. I heard the commotion before I saw her. She was yelling my name, demanding the receptionist call me down. Security was already moving toward her. I came out of the elevator and saw her red-faced and crying. She spotted me and rushed over. "You need to talk to me right now. You need to fix what you broke. Fix our family." Security grabbed her arms gently but firmly. "Ma'am, you need to leave." She fought against them, still screaming at me. "This is your fault. Everything falling apart is because of you." They walked her toward the door while she twisted around to keep yelling. My coworkers stared. My boss came out of his office looking concerned. I stood there shaking as they got her outside. That's when I realized Ariane wasn't actually sorry. She was just mad about the consequences. That night, I sat at my computer and wrote an email to my entire family. Subject line, boundaries. I kept it simple. No unannounced visits to my home or workplace. No showing up without permission. No sending messages through Nathan or his family. No third-party contact through friends or extended family. I would reach out when and if I was ready to talk. They needed to respect my timeline, not theirs. Mine. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Mom responded in under 5 minutes. A long email about how I was being unreasonable, how families work through problems together, how I was tearing everyone apart by refusing to communicate, how she raised me better than this. I read it once and felt my chest get tight. Nathan found me staring at the screen. He read over my shoulder and then gently closed the laptop. He showed me how to set up filters so Mom's emails went straight to a folder I could check later. When I was emotionally ready. Not when she decided to bombard me. Victoria was the only one who respected my boundaries completely. She sent one text. "I'm here whenever you're ready. No pressure, no guilt, no demands." Then silence. Nothing for days, nothing for weeks. The quiet from her made me more willing to eventually talk to her than all of Ariane's screaming or mom's guilt trips ever could. She was showing me what respect actually looked like. My next therapy session with Lindsay focused on grief. She helped me see that I was grieving the loss of my family. But not the family I actually had. The family I wished I'd had. The parents who would have fed me fresh food and treated me equal to my siblings. The brother and sister who would have stood up for me. I wasn't losing something good. I was releasing something that had been hurting me for years. The grief was real, but it was complicated. Mourning people who were still alive but had never really been there for me anyway. Nathan came home from work one evening in early December with an idea. He asked if I wanted to host our own holiday dinner. His parents, his sister, maybe a few close friends. People who actually cared about me. People who treated me like I mattered. We could make new traditions. Better traditions. The idea made something warm spread through my chest, creating something positive instead of just running from something negative. I said yes before he even finished explaining his plan. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake a few days later. Can we meet for coffee? I promise to respect whatever boundaries you set. Just want to talk if you're willing. I stared at the message for a long time, showed it to Lindsay at my next session. She asked what I wanted to do, not what I should do, what I actually wanted. I decided I'd meet him. Public place. I could bring Nathan if I wanted. I could leave anytime. I texted back and we set it up for Saturday morning. The coffee shop was busy when I arrived. Jake was already sitting at a corner table. He looked different. Tired. His hair was messier than usual. He stood up when he saw me but didn't try to hug me or get too close. I sat down across from him. We ordered drinks. The first few minutes were awkward. Neither of us knew how to start. Then he told me he'd been seeing a therapist for a month, working through his privilege, his complicity. Those were his actual words. He talked about unpacking how he never questioned why I got different treatment, how he just was accepted it as normal because it benefited him. His wife was willing to try counseling with him. He said he didn't deserve that chance, but he was grateful for it. He looked me in the eye and said he was sorry. Not sorry I felt hurt. Sorry for what he did. For what he didn't do. For 8 years of watching me suffer and doing nothing. I sat there holding my coffee and watching him, trying to figure out if this was real or if he was just saying what he thought I wanted to hear. But something about how uncomfortable he looked. How he didn't try to make excuses or rush me to forgive him. It felt different from before. It felt like maybe he was actually starting to understand. I told Jake I appreciated him working on himself, but I wasn't ready to have him in my life regularly yet. He nodded and said he understood. No arguments or guilt trips about how I should give him another chance. That simple acceptance felt like more respect than he'd shown me in our entire childhood. We finished our coffee and he walked me to my car without trying to hug me or make promises about the future. A week later, Victoria called to say Ariane had sent me a letter and asked if she could drop it off. I said yes, even though I knew it was probably manipulative to use Victoria as a messenger. The letter arrived the next day, and I sat at my kitchen table staring at the envelope for 10 minutes before opening it. Ariane's handwriting covered 3 pages front and back. She wrote about how I was tearing the family apart and making everything about me when other people were hurting too. She said her boyfriend left because of what I did at Thanksgiving, and now she was alone because I needed to make some big dramatic point. The whole thing blamed me for exposing the problem instead of blaming our parents for creating it. I brought the letter to my next session with Lindsay, and she helped me see that Ariane was still centered on her own pain, instead of taking any real responsibility. Ariane wanted me to fix things and make everyone comfortable again without anyone actually changing. I decided not to respond because anything I said would just give her more ammunition to paint herself as the victim. 2 days after Ariane's letter, my parents sent their own message through regular mail. The envelope had both their names written in my mom's careful handwriting, but the letter inside looked like someone else wrote it. Every sentence hit the right notes about taking responsibility and acknowledging harm. They used words like accountability and impact and generational trauma. It felt coached like a therapist or counselor told them exactly what to write. I appreciated the effort because at least they were trying, but it didn't feel personal or genuine. The words were right, but they felt empty, like reading a script instead of hearing actual remorse. I put the letter in a drawer and didn't respond because I wasn't ready to engage with performed apologies. Nathan came home that evening and found me cooking dinner with more energy than I'd had in weeks. He asked what changed, and I told him I wanted to host our own holiday dinner in December. We could invite his parents and his sister and Victoria and a couple of my close friends. Maybe Jake and his wife if they wanted to come. We'd make new traditions with people who actually cared about me instead of people who treated me like garbage. Nathan hugged me and said that sounded perfect, and he'd help with whatever I needed. We spent the next 3 weeks planning the menu and decorating our apartment and sending invitations. Victoria said yes immediately and offered to bring her famous apple pie. Jake texted asking if the invitation was real, and I told him yes, but he needed to respect that this was my space with my rules. He agreed without hesitation. Nathan's family responded within hours saying they wouldn't miss it. My two closest friends from work both cleared their schedules. The morning of our December dinner, I woke up excited instead of anxious. Nathan and I spent hours in the kitchen cooking together and laughing about nothing important. His parents arrived first with wine and flowers and hugs that felt genuine. His sister brought homemade rolls that smelled incredible. Victoria showed up with her pie and a gift bag full of fancy coffee she knew I loved. My friends came together bringing a cheese board they'd assembled. Jake and his wife arrived last, looking nervous but grateful to be included. We all gathered around our small dining table that we'd extended with a folding table to fit everyone. The food covered every surface and it was all fresh and made with care. I looked around at these people who chose to be here because they wanted to support me, and I felt something warm and solid settle in my chest. This was what family was supposed to feel like. People who showed up because they cared, not because they were obligated. People who treated me like I mattered. We ate and talked and laughed for hours. Jake's wife pulled me aside while we were clearing plates and thanked me quietly for giving Jake a chance to show he was changing. She said she could see the work he was doing in therapy, and it gave her hope for their marriage. She apologized for what I went through growing up and said she wished she'd known sooner so she could have said something. Her words felt sincere, and I told her I appreciated her being honest with Jake about how serious this was. Later, Victoria found me in the kitchen washing dishes and said she needed to tell me something. She'd cut off contact with my parents until they did real work on themselves. She said watching my courage and confronting them made her realize she'd enabled their behavior for too long by staying silent. She was done being complicit in their treatment of me. I hugged her tight and felt grateful to have at least one person from my original family who understood. After everyone left, Nathan and I collapsed on the couch surrounded by leftovers and dirty dishes. We were too tired to finish cleaning. He told me he'd never seen me this relaxed and joyful. I realized I'd been carrying the weight of my family's dysfunction for so long that I forgot what lightness felt like. This dinner with people who actually loved me felt like breathing clean air after years of choking on smoke. The holidays passed and January arrived cold and gray. I sat in Lindsay's office and told her I thought I was ready to have one conversation with my parents. She helped me prepare by practicing what I wanted to say and what boundaries I needed to set. I decided to invite them to a family therapy session with a neutral counselor. That way, there'd be someone professional to call out their justifications and keep things from spiraling into the same old patterns. I sent them an email making it clear this was the only way I was willing to engage right now. They responded within an hour saying they'd do whatever I needed. We scheduled the session for February with a family therapist Lindsay recommended. The day arrived and I drove to the office with my stomach in knots. My parents were already in the waiting room when I got there. Mom looked like she'd been crying. Dad sat stiff and uncomfortable in his chair. The therapist called us back and we settled into her office with its soft lighting and comfortable chairs that were probably supposed to make hard conversations easier. Mom cried through most of the session. Dad stayed defensive even when the therapist gently challenged his explanations. But they both heard from a professional that what they did was abusive and caused real harm. The therapist used words like systematic devaluation and scapegoating and parentification. She helped them understand why their justifications about teaching me lessons didn't excuse their choices to treat me differently than my siblings. She pointed out that if the lessons were so important, everyone should have learned them the same way. After an hour, the therapist asked my parents what they wanted from this process. They both turned to me and asked what they needed to do to have a relationship with me. I took a deep breath and told them honestly that I didn't know if that was possible. If it was, it would require years of consistent changed behavior and respect for my boundaries, not just apologies, and it meant accepting that I might never trust them the way I did before they spent 8 years teaching me I was worth less than my siblings. It meant understanding that some damage doesn't get fixed with a few therapy sessions and a letter. They sat with that information looking smaller than I'd ever seen them, and I felt something shift inside me. Outside the therapist's office, I sat in my car for 10 minutes just breathing. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. My chest felt lighter than it had in months. I'd said everything I needed to say to my parents in that session, and I hadn't cried or yelled or lost control. Lindsay had helped me prepare exactly what boundaries I needed to set, and I'd done it. I drove home, and Nathan was waiting with dinner already made. He asked how it went, and I told him I felt like I'd finally let go of expecting them to suddenly become different people. A week later, Jake texted asking if Ariane could talk to me. She wanted to join a therapy session if I was willing. I thought about it for 2 days before I agreed to one meeting with Lindsay present. Ariane showed up looking scared and small in a way I'd never seen her. The session started with Lindsay asking Ariane what she wanted from this conversation. Ariane broke down crying within 5 minutes. She said she'd been terrified of becoming the target if she defended me. She admitted she saw what was happening and she chose to stay silent because it was easier to let me take the abuse than risk getting treated the same way. It was the first honest thing she'd ever said to me about our childhood. Lindsay asked her what she wanted now, and Ariane said she didn't know if I could ever forgive her, but she needed me to know she was scared, and she was sorry. I told her I appreciated her honesty, but forgiveness would take time if it happened at all. She nodded and said she understood. We didn't hug or make promises, but something felt different when she left. By March, I'd built routines that felt genuinely mine. Nathan and I had Friday movie nights where we cooked together. Aunt Victoria came over for Sunday brunch every other week. Jake texted occasionally, and I responded when I felt ready. My parents sent emails every few weeks respecting the boundaries I'd set, and I answered some of them. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was progress. I had friends from work who knew my whole story and still wanted to spend time with me. I had people who treated me like I mattered without making me earn basic respect. Easter weekend arrived, and Nathan suggested we skip the family drama and go to the beach instead. We drove 3 hours to the coast and spent the day walking on the sand. The sun was warm on my face, and the ocean stretched out forever in front of us. Nathan held my hand and told me he was proud of how far I'd come. I realized standing there that I'd reclaimed something my parents tried to take from me for 8 years. I knew my worth now. I knew I deserved to be treated with basic dignity and love. The family who raised me might never fully understand what they did to me, but I'd found people who saw me as valuable just for existing. I'd built a life where I didn't have to earn my place at the table or accept scraps while everyone else got fresh food. I looked at Nathan and smiled, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be.